A poor mother and her daughter help an elderly woman on Christmas Eve. The next day, a billionaire shows up and changes everything. The snow was falling endlessly. Marianne stood in front of the open refrigerator, staring inside as if something new might magically appear. But no. It was the same as always. Half a limp carrot, 2 small potatoes, a piece of an onion, and a pint of milk that needed to be used soon. She sighed and slowly closed the door. It was Christmas Eve. Outside, people rushed through the snow-covered streets, carrying bags full of gifts. The shop windows glittered with colorful lights. Families were preparing for big dinners, full tables, laughter and hugs. But here, in this small apartment on the 3rd floor of an old building, reality was different. Marianne looked around. The walls had damp stains. The paint was peeling in several places. The sofa was old, its fabric worn and torn. The kitchen table had 3 chairs because the 4th one had broken months ago. But it was theirs. It was what they had. Mommy! Sophie appeared in the kitchen, barefoot, her blonde hair falling over her shoulders and her blue eyes shining with curiosity. Are we going to have Christmas dinner? Marianne turned and smiled, a tired smile, but a real one. Yeah, of course we are, sweetie. I'm going to make a really nice soup. Sophie made a thoughtful face. Soup again. Yes, but it will be special, you'll see. It's Christmas, so we'll make it with extra love. The little girl accepted without complaining. She always did. At 5 years old, Sophie already knew that things were hard. She didn't really understand why, but she knew. She saw the way her mother sighed when she opened her empty wallet. She saw how she ate less so that Sophie could eat more. Marianne grabbed the carrot, the potatoes, and the onion. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make something hot, something to fill their bellies and warm their chests. She looked at the clock on the wall. It was almost 6 in the evening. The day was already getting dark quickly. Outside, the wind howled against the window. The snow covered everything, the cars, the sidewalks, the roofs. The whole world seemed white and silent. It was beautiful, but also scary. The kind of cold that got into your bones. Inside the apartment, the cold seeped in through the cracks. Marianne looked at the old heater in the corner of the living room. It still worked, but she avoided turning it on too much. Last month's electric bill had been high. She was still saving up money to pay it. She began to chop the vegetables carefully, using every last bit. Nothing could be wasted. Sophie sat at the kitchen table, swinging her little legs, watching her mother work. Mommy? Is Dad coming for Christmas? Marianne stopped chopping for a second. She felt something tighten in her chest, but she didn't let it show. No, sweetie, he's not coming. Why? Because he's far away. Very far away. Sophie was quiet for a moment, swinging her legs. Did he forget about us? Marianne swallowed hard. I don't know, honey, but we're okay. We have each other. Sophie nodded. She always accepted. The truth was different. Sophie's father had left almost 2 years ago. He disappeared without warning, without leaving anything. No money, no explanation, not even a note. Just silence. Marianne had looked for him in the first few months, but she gave up. He didn't want to be found, and she learned to move on, alone, working wherever she could, cleaning houses, taking care of the elderly, taking any job. But in the last few months, the jobs had dried up. Marianne put the vegetables in the pot with water and lit the stove. The blue flame lit up the dark kitchen for an instant. She added a little salt, stirred slowly, and covered the pot. Now, they just had to wait. The smell of the vegetables began to spread through the apartment. It was simple but comforting. Sophie took a deep breath. It smells good, Mum. It's going to be even better. Sophie climbed down from the chair and went to the living room window. She climbed onto the old sofa and pressed her face against the cold glass, looking at the street below. The snow kept falling heavily. The streets were almost empty. Everyone had already gone home. It was Christmas. Nobody wanted to be out on a night like this, but then Sophie saw something. Mom, come look. Marianne wiped her hands and went to her daughter. What is it? Sophie pointed outside. That lady down there. Marianne looked. In the middle of the snow, a small hunched figure was walking slowly down the sidewalk. She was wearing a thin grey coat. She had no hat, no gloves. Her white hair was wet with snow stuck to her face. She looked lost, walking from one side to the other, aimlessly. "She's all alone," Sophie said, worried. "She sure is." Marianne frowned. Something was wrong. The woman didn't seem to be going anywhere, just wandering. "Mommy, she's going to freeze." Marianne felt her heart ache. She knew well what the cold felt like. She knew what it was like to have nowhere to go. "Stay here, Sophie." "No, I'm going with you." Marianne looked at her daughter. Sophie's eyes were determined. She wasn't going to accept being left alone. "Okay, but put on your coat and hat and hurry." The two of them bundled up quickly. Marianne grabbed an old blanket from the sofa, and they ran down the stairs. The building was old, with no elevator. The walls were peeling, and the hallway smelled like mildew. When they opened the street door, the icy wind hit their faces hard. The snow was falling thick, making it almost impossible to see clearly. "There," Sophie pointed. The lady was standing still now, in the middle of the sidewalk, looking around as if searching for something she couldn't find. Marianne and Sophie approached slowly. Their shoes sank into the snow. The cold bit their cheeks, their fingers. Sophie went ahead, bravely. "Ma'am, are you okay?" The woman turned. She had a wrinkled face, her light-colored eyes wide and scared. She was shivering so much she could barely speak. "No, I'm lost." Her voice came out weak, almost swallowed by the wind. Marianne got closer and put her hand on the lady's shoulder. "Come inside and get warm at our place." The woman looked at Marianne, her eyes filling with tears. I don't know where I live." "You don't need to know right now. Come with us." Sophie took the lady's icy hand. "It's warm inside, and there's soup." The woman looked at Sophie as if she were seeing an angel. You're such a beautiful little girl." Sophie smiled. "Thank you. Let's go." Marianne wrapped the blanket around the lady's shoulders, and the three of them headed back to the building. The climb up the stairs was slow. The woman could barely walk straight, stumbling over her own feet. When they finally entered the apartment, the warmth from the pot on the stove welcomed them. "Sit here," Marianne pointed to the sofa. The lady sat down slowly, still shivering. Her lips were purple from the cold. Sophie ran to the bedroom and came back with another blanket. She covered the woman carefully. "Dear's there. Now you'll be warm." The woman looked at Sophie with watery eyes. Thank you." Marianne went to the kitchen and stirred the soup. She got a mug, filled it with warm water, and came back to the living room. "Drink this first. It will help." The lady held the mug with two trembling hands and drank slowly. Sophie sat next to her, watching everything. "What's your name?" the girl asked. The woman stopped drinking and looked at Sophie. For a moment she seemed confused. Then she said softly, "Rose. My name is Rose." "That's pretty, like the flower." Rose gave a small smile. "Yes, like the flower." Marianne sat in the armchair and studied the woman. She was wearing good clothes, but they were old. The coat was made of expensive fabric, but it was dirty with snow and mud. She wore no wedding ring, she had no purse, nothing. "Rose, do you have any family? Someone we can call?" Rose looked down at her own hands, lost. I don't remember. I had someone, but I don't remember." Marianne exchanged a worried glance with Sophie. The situation was serious. "It's okay. We're going to help you, but right now you need to eat something." Rose nodded quietly. Sophie got up and ran to the bedroom. She came back holding her rag doll, the only one she had. It was old, with frayed yarn hair and a stained dress, but it was her favorite toy. She placed the doll in Rose's lap. "Here, she'll keep you company." Rose picked up the doll carefully, as if it was something precious, and she began to cry. You're so kind, so kind." Sophie hugged Rose. "Don't cry. We're here now." Marianne felt her eyes sting. She got up quickly and went to the kitchen before the tears could fall. The soup was ready. She served 3 small bowls. There wasn't much soup. It had to stretch, but it was hot, and it tasted like home. The 3 of them ate in silence. Rose held the spoon with difficulty. Her hand trembled so much that she spilled a little with every spoonful, but she managed, and with every sip she seemed to grow calmer. "It's good," Rose said softly. "I'm glad," Marianne replied. After the soup, Marianne made some herbal tea. The sweet smell filled the apartment. Rose drank the tea slowly, holding the mug close to her face, letting the steam warm her cold skin. "Thank you. Thank you for everything." "You don't need to thank us," Marianne said gently. "We just did the right thing." Sophie yawned. It was getting late. "I'm taking you to bed, sweetie. But what about Rose? She'll sleep here on the sofa. I'll bring the thickest blanket," Sophie agreed. But first, she gave Rose a kiss on the cheek. "Good night, Rose." "Good night, dear. God bless you." Marianne took Sophie to the bedroom. The girl lay down and closed her eyes almost immediately. Marianne went back to the living room. Rose was already lying on the sofa, hugging the rag doll. Marianne covered her with 2 blankets and turned off the light, leaving only the dim light from the kitchen on. "Sleep well, Rose." "Thank you. Thank you." Marianne sat in the armchair, watching the woman fall asleep. Rose was breathing deeply now, peaceful for the first time in days. Outside, the snow continued to fall. The wind blew hard. The world was cold and dark. But inside that small, simple apartment, there was warmth, there was kindness, there was hope. And though no one knew it yet, that night would change everything forever. Marianne stayed awake for a few more hours, sitting in the armchair. She watched Rose sleep and thought about everything that had happened. Who was this woman? Where had she come from? Why was she alone in the snow? The questions spun in her head, but there were no answers. Outside, the blizzard finally began to ease. The flakes were falling slower now, lighter. The silence of the night was deep. Marianne looked at Sophie sleeping in the bedroom. She looked at Rose on the sofa. 2 people who needed her. 2 people she had taken in, even when she had almost nothing. But that's what made the difference, she thought. It wasn't about having a lot, it was about giving what you had. Even if it was just a little. Even if it was just thin soup, an old blanket, a worn-out doll. It was about opening the door. It was about extending a hand. It was about not turning your back when someone was in need. Marianne finally got up and went to the bedroom. She lay down next to Sophie, who was fast asleep. She pulled the thin blanket over both of them and closed her eyes. Tomorrow would be another day. Tomorrow she would find out more about Rose. Tomorrow she would try to help her find her family. But today she had done the right thing, and that was enough. Outside, the last snow of the day fell softly on the sleeping city. Inside the apartment, 3 hearts beat peacefully, and everything was about to change. Thomas woke up with a weight on his chest. Something was wrong, he couldn't explain it, but he felt it. It was a bad feeling, a tightness that wouldn't go away. He looked at the clock on his bedside table, 7 in the morning. He got up quickly, put on his silk robe and went down the wide staircase of the mansion. The house was enormous, with high ceilings, expensive crystal chandeliers, and Italian marble floors. Everything was immaculate. Everything was perfectly organized. Everything was cold. "Mother?" he called out, walking down the silent hallway. Nothing. "Mother? Rose?" Silence. Thomas felt his heart speed up. He went straight to her room on the other side of the house. He knocked on the solid wood door. No answer. He opened it slowly. The bed was empty, made as if no one had slept in it. His heart pounded. He ran out, checking every room in the mansion. The living room, the gourmet kitchen, the library, the dining room, the conservatory. Nothing. Rose was nowhere. "Margaret!" he called out, almost yelling. The housekeeper came running from upstairs, startled by his tone. "Yes, Mr. Thomas. Where is my mother?" I don't know, sir. I thought she was still sleeping." "She's not in her room." "Did you see her leave?" "No, sir, I didn't see anything. I went to bed and just woke up a little while ago." Thomas ran his hand through his hair forcefully, trying to think. He took a deep breath. He couldn't panic. Not yet. He had to stay calm. He went to the security room, a small room in the back of the house, filled with monitors showing all the cameras installed inside and outside the property. He sat in the leather chair and started checking the previous night's recordings with trembling hands. And then he saw it, 3:15 in the morning. Rose, walking out the front door, alone. Not in her heavy coat, just a thin one, walking slowly, confused, stumbling, as if she didn't know where she was going. No. Thomas rewound the footage, checked again. Then he checked the security system, and he felt his stomach turn when he saw the screen. It was turned off. Someone had turned off the alarm on the main door. Probably Rose herself, not knowing what she was doing, confused by the illness that was slowly consuming her memory. He looked at the clock again. It was almost 8 in the morning. She had been out there for almost 5 hours. 5 hours in the snow, in the deadly cold of Christmas Eve, alone and lost. Thomas felt panic rise in his throat like bile. He ran to his room, changed clothes in seconds, grabbed the warmest coat he had and his car keys. "Margaret, call the police now. Tell them my mother is missing." "Tell them she has Alzheimer's." "Yes, sir, I'll call right away." Thomas ran out of the house. The morning cold hit his face with brutal force. Snow covered everything. The huge garden, the cars, the fountain, the trees. The world was white, silent, and deadly. He got into the expensive black SUV, started the engine, and sped out of the automatic gates. The streets were deserted. It was Christmas morning. Everyone was at home, with their families celebrating, opening presents, laughing, but he was here, desperate, looking for his mother who had disappeared on the coldest night of the year. Thomas drove slowly through the main streets, looking everywhere, searching for any sign of her, any clue, any movement. Nothing. He went downtown. The stores were all closed. The display windows were dark, the streets completely empty. Only a few cars passed by every now and then. "Where are you, Mom? Where did you go? Please," he muttered to himself, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. He drove for almost an hour, passing the same places over and over. Every minute that passed increased his desperation. Every empty street was another blow to his chest, until he saw a man on the corner of a residential street, shoveling snow off the sidewalk in front of his house with an old shovel. Thomas stopped the car abruptly, rolled down the window. "Excuse me, please." The man looked up, surprised. "Yes, did you see an elderly lady around here? White hair, alone, walking in the street. She was lost." The man thought for a second, leaning on the shovel. "I did, yeah. Last night, real late. She looked very lost. Poor thing. Walking slow, seemed really confused. I tried to talk to her, but she didn't really answer. Where? Which way did she go?" "Please, and it's important." "Towards the old neighborhood. Over by Oak Street, I think. I saw her turn in that direction." "Thank you. Thank you so much." Thomas rolled up the window and sped off. The old neighborhood, Oak Street. He knew the area by name. It was a poor part of the city, with old buildings and narrow streets he had never set foot in. He got there in 10 minutes, driving too fast on the snow-covered streets. The streets were tighter, darker. The snow was dirtier, mixed with slush and trash. The buildings were low, with peeling paint. Some windows had boards nailed up instead of glass. Old cars parked along the side. Kids were playing in the snow in clothes too thin for the cold. Thomas drove slowly now, looking at every corner, every door, every window, every person on the street. And then he saw something that caught his eye. On the 3rd floor of a particularly old and run-down building, in a fogged-up window, there was a rag doll. Small, old, worn-out, with frayed yarn hair. He didn't know why, but something about that doll deeply caught his attention. A gut feeling, an intuition. He parked the car, got out, and looked closer. The building was indeed very old. The front door was ajar, the latch broken and rusted. Thomas went inside. The hallway smelled strongly of mildew and damp. The walls were peeling, with dark stains. The concrete floor was cracked. A single light bulb flickered overhead. He climbed the stairs slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. Each step creaked under his feet. 3rd floor, apartment 3B. He stopped in front of the old wooden door. He took a deep breath, trying to prepare himself, and he knocked. Light footsteps on the other side. The door opened slowly. A blonde woman with tired, light-colored eyes appeared. She was wearing simple, careworn clothes. She had dark circles under her eyes, but her face was kind, beautiful despite the exhaustion. "Yes?" she asked cautiously, a little suspicious. I'm sorry to bother you, especially today. I'm looking for my mother. An elderly lady. White hair, light eyes. She disappeared last night. She has Alzheimer's and gets very confused." Marianne's expression changed. It softened, became understanding. "Please, come in." Thomas entered. The apartment was small, very small, old, worn furniture, walls stained by humidity. But it was clean, organized, with a faint smell of herbal tea in the air. And then he saw, sitting on the old sofa, holding a teacup in both hands, was Rose. Thomas felt his legs go weak. But this wasn't the Rose he had left at home. It wasn't the confused, lost woman who wandered the halls of the mansion, not knowing where she was. This Rose was different. Her white hair was carefully combed, pulled back in a simple bun. Her face, washed and clean, had color. It wasn't pale like it always was lately. She was wearing one of the blankets over her shoulders, but she looked warm, comfortable, and most importantly, she was smiling. Next to her, Sophie was showing her drawings she had made that morning. Rose was looking with genuine attention, pointing at the colors, commenting on the flowers Sophie had drawn. "How lovely, dear." "You draw very well," Rose was saying, her voice clear and calm. Thomas had to grab the doorframe to keep from falling. How long had it been since he'd seen his mother like this? How long since she had smiled like that? How long since she had seemed alive? "Mom." Rose looked up slowly. She looked at him for a long moment. There was something in her eyes. It wasn't exactly full recognition, but it also wasn't the total confusion and fear he saw every day. It was something different, something in between. Thomas crossed the small room in 3 steps and knelt in front of her, taking her hands as gently as he could. "Mom, it's me, Thomas." Rose looked at him. She studied his face for a long moment. Her fingers squeezed his back. There was affection in the gesture, even if her memory was foggy. "Thomas," she repeated the name slowly, as if savoring every letter. "Yes, Mom, your son. I was looking for you all night. You had me so worried." Rose looked at Marianne, who was standing near the kitchen. Then she looked at Sophie, then back to Thomas. "These ladies, they saved me." "Thomas." "I was so cold, so scared, lost, and they took me in. They gave me hot soup, tea, blankets, and this beautiful girl." She looked at Sophie with such affection, "gave me her doll." Her voice came out clearer than Thomas had heard it in months. He noticed it immediately and felt something tighten in his chest. He looked at Marianne, who was standing quietly, observing. "Thank you so much. You have no idea how much this means to me. She could have frozen to death out there. You saved my mother's life." Marianne shook her head gently. "We did what anyone should do. She needed help." Thomas stood up, still holding his mother's hand. He took his wallet out of his pocket with his free hand. "Please, let me pay you. For the food, the lodging, for the trouble of taking care of her. Whatever amount you think is fair." Marianne held up her hand, refusing firmly but not rudely. "There's no need. We did it from the heart." Thomas stopped mid-motion. He looked at her, genuinely surprised. "But you gave her food, shelter, care, and we did it because it was the right thing to do. Not for money. She's a person, not a business." Thomas was silent for a moment. He looked around more carefully. He saw the old, worn-out furniture. He saw the stained walls. He saw the nearly empty refrigerator that he could see through the slightly open kitchen door. He saw the thin blankets piled in the corner, and he understood. These people had almost nothing. But they shared the little they had, without a second thought, without expecting anything in return. Sophie got up from the sofa, still holding her colorful drawings. "Rose is really nice, you know. She liked my drawings, and she had herbal tea with us this morning, and she helped us set the table too." Thomas looked at the little girl. She had pure, kind, innocent eyes. "What's your name?" "Sophie." That's a very pretty name. Thank you for taking care of my mom, Sophie. You were very kind and brave. You're welcome. She's my friend now. We like her a lot. Rose smiled at Sophie. A real smile, full of affection and life. Thomas looked at Marianne again. I really don't know how to thank you. Truly, you did something that most people wouldn't have done. Most people would have just walked by. Everyone deserves help when they need it, Marianne said simply, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Thomas took a deep breath, trying to control the emotion rising in his throat. Mom, we need to go home now. You need to rest properly. Rose looked at Sophie and Marianne. She seemed reluctant, almost sad to have to leave. Can I come back to visit? Of course you can, Sophie said quickly, smiling wide. We'd love that. Marianne nodded too. You're welcome anytime you want, Rose. Thomas helped Rose get up from the sofa. She was steadier today, more present, more stable than she had been in weeks. Sophie ran up and hugged Rose tightly. The elderly woman closed her eyes and hugged the little girl back, holding her with all her affection, running her hand through her blonde hair. Thank you, dear. You're a real angel, an angel God put in my path. You're an angel too. Come back soon. Okay, we want to see you again. Rose smiled, a smile that lit up her whole face, making her look 10 years younger. Thomas felt his eyes sting and had to blink several times. He looked at Marianne one last time. Thank you, Marianne. Really, can I come back to thank you properly, to talk? Marianne hesitated for a second, but nodded. Yes, you can. Thank you. You two are very special people. Thomas guided Rose to the door carefully. She turned one last time and waved to Sophie, who waved back, jumping excitedly and blowing kisses. They went down the stairs slowly. Rose held onto the railing tightly, but she was much more stable than Thomas expected. She didn't stumble. She didn't seem confused. She seemed present. When they reached the car, Thomas helped her into the comfortable seat and carefully fastened her seatbelt. He got into the driver's side, but before starting the engine, he looked back at the old building. He saw Sophie and Marianne in the third-floor window waving at them. He waved back, his heart tight. Rose waved too, smiling that smile he hadn't seen in so long. Thomas started the engine and began to drive slowly through the snow-covered streets. Rose was quiet at first, looking out the window, but there was something different about her. A calm, a peace, a presence he hadn't seen in months. And then she started to talk. The soup. Thomas, the soup was so good. So simple found, but so delicious. Made with so much care. I could feel the love in every spoonful. Thomas glanced at her, surprised. She was speaking coherently. Connected. Present. And the little girl, that Sophie, she gave me her doll, the only doll she had. Did you notice that? It was her only one, and she gave it to me anyway. Without a second thought, Rose's voice was full of emotion, but it was clear, steady. And Marianne, that strong woman, she had almost nothing in her fridge. Thomas, I saw when she opened it. But she still shared everything with me. Made tea, covered me with blankets. She combed my hair this morning so gently. Thomas felt his throat tighten. He drove slowly, paying attention to her words. They didn't treat me like a problem. They didn't treat me like a burden. They treated me like a person. Like someone who matters. Rose turned to look at him, her light eyes shining. How long has it been since I felt like this, Thomas? How long since I felt alive, useful, present? Thomas swallowed hard. He couldn't speak, he just listened. Those two, they have nothing, almost nothing, but they have everything. They have love, they have kindness, they have generosity, they have what really matters. She looked out the window again, but kept talking. Sophie showed me her drawings. She asked my opinion on the colors. She made me feel important. And when I helped set the table this morning, Marianne thanked me as if I had done something incredible. Rose smiled, a soft, genuine smile. I remember everything, Thomas, every moment. The soup, the tea, the doll, the conversations. I remember. Thomas had to blink several times to fight back the tears that insisted on falling. I know, Mom. I saw. You were different there. Better. Because I felt cared for, I felt seen, not just as the old, confused woman who forgets things, but as Rose, as a person. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said softly, "It's the first time in a long time that I've felt truly alive, Thomas. Truly alive." Thomas felt something break inside him, a good pain, a necessary pain. He drove in silence the rest of the way, just listening to his mother talk about the soup, the doll, the beautiful girl with blue eyes, the strong woman who took her in without asking for anything in return, and he realized something he should have realized a long time ago. His mother didn't just need expensive medicine and private doctors. She needed human warmth, connection. To be treated like a person, not a patient. To be seen, to be heard, to be truly loved. And two people who had nothing had given her that in one night, while he, who had everything, had failed to give her that in years. "I promise I'll be better. I'll be more present. I'll listen to you more. I'll truly see you." Rose turned to look at him. She held his hand. "I know you will, my son, I know." And for the first time in a long time, Thomas believed he could change, that he should change, that he would change. For her, for Marianne and Sophie, and for himself, because everyone deserves a second chance, even him. Thomas woke up early the next day. He couldn't sleep well all night. He kept thinking about Rose, about how she had come back different from that small apartment, about how she had talked the entire way home, alive, present, happy, and he kept thinking about Marianne and Sophie, about that humble apartment, that empty refrigerator, those thin blankets, that pure kindness that had saved his mother. He couldn't just let it go. He got out of bed at 6 in the morning, took a quick shower and went down to the kitchen. Margaret was already there, preparing breakfast as she always did. "Good morning, Mr. Thomas." "Good morning, Margaret. I need you to help me with something important." "Of course, sir. What do you need?" "I want to put together a basket, a really full, generous basket, with groceries, fruits, vegetables, meats, everything a family needs to get through a month. Nothing cheap. I want quality." Margaret stopped what she was doing and looked at him, surprised. "A basket, sir?" "Yes. And I also need some things for a child, a 5-year-old girl, colored pencils, but the good kind with lots of colors, new notebooks. Nice, illustrated children's books, quality things that she can actually use and enjoy." Margaret smiled, understanding. "Is this for the people who helped Mrs. Rose?" "It is. They saved her life, Margaret, and they didn't ask for anything in return." "I'll get everything ready right away, Mr. Thomas." "With pleasure." Thomas ate breakfast alone at the large dining room table. Rose was still sleeping. She had slept through the entire night without waking up once, which was extremely rare. Usually, she woke up several times during the night, confused, disoriented, wandering the dark hallways looking for something she didn't know what. But not today. Today she was resting deeply. 2 hours later, Margaret returned with everything. She had gone to the most expensive market in the city and filled 3 huge paper grocery bags. Brown and white rice, black beans and pinto beans, various types of pasta, olive oil, sunflower oil, sugar, gourmet coffee, whole milk, assorted cheeses, ham, turkey breast, fresh seasonal fruits, organic vegetables, produce, prime meats, chicken, artisanal bread, butter, cookies, natural juices, Belgian chocolate, tea, honey, and in a separate package, wrapped in colorful paper, were the gifts for Sophie. A large box of colored pencils with 48 vibrant colors, 3 new notebooks with colorful, illustrated covers, and 5 beautifully illustrated children's books with stories of adventure and fantasy. Thomas looked at everything spread out on the kitchen counter and nodded, satisfied. "Dummy's perfect, Margaret. Thank you very much." "You're welcome, sir. They are special people, aren't they?" "They are very special, more than they know." He took the heavy bags and the gifts, placed everything carefully in the back seat of the car, and left. The snow had stopped during the night. The sun was peeking shyly through the grey clouds, creating a soft glow over the city, still covered in white. The streets were busier today, with people returning to their routines after Christmas. Thomas drove to the old neighborhood, crossing the city. The contrast was stark. He left the wealthy neighborhoods, with their huge houses and perfect lawns, and entered the poorer streets, with old buildings and rusty cars. The narrow streets, the buildings worn down by time. Everything looked even harsher and more difficult in the daylight. Children played in the dirty snow, men smoked on the corners, women carried heavy bags. He parked in front of Marianne's building. He grabbed the bags and the gifts. There was so much stuff he had to make 2 trips up to the 3rd floor, climbing those old stairs that creaked with every step. When he finally arrived with everything, he stopped in front of the door. He took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts, and he knocked. Light footsteps on the other side. The door opened slowly. Marianne appeared. She was wearing the same simple clothes as yesterday, faded jeans and a long-sleeved shirt. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a ponytail. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes, but she smiled when she saw him. Thomas, what a surprise. Hi, Marianne. Sorry to show up unannounced. I brought a few things for you. He showed her the enormous bags. Marianne stared, her eyes widening in surprise. What is all this? Groceries, and a few gifts for Sophie. It's the least I can do to thank you for what you did for my mother. Marianne just stood there, holding the door, unsure what to say. Thomas, I already told you, you don't need to pay us. We did it from the heart. I know, and that's exactly why I need to do this. Please, may I come in? She hesitated for a second, but then opened the door completely. Thomas came in and put everything on the small kitchen table. The bags were so many and so full that they took up almost the entire table. Sophie appeared from the small bedroom, still in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes with her little hands. Her blonde hair was messy from sleep. Who is it, Mum? It's Thomas, sweetie, Rose's son, remember? Sophie woke up instantly, her blue eyes shining. Hi, Thomas, is Rose okay? Did she sleep well at home? She's great, Sophie. She's at home, resting. And you know what? She didn't stop talking about you yesterday. She said you're the kindest girl she's ever met. Sophie smiled wide, proudly. Really? Really? And look, I brought something special for you. He picked up the package wrapped in colorful paper and handed it to her. Sophie took it carefully, as if it were something fragile and precious. For me. For you. She opened it slowly, with the utmost care, trying not to tear the paper too much. When she saw the colored pencils, her eyes lit up intensely. Mom, look, colored pencils, and there are so many different colors. She opened the box with fingers trembling with excitement and started counting, taking each pencil out to look. Boys Mahar 2, Mahar 3, Mahar 4. Mom, there are so many. I've never had this many pencils in my whole life. Then she saw the new notebooks with colorful, shiny covers and the illustrated books with beautiful pictures on the covers. Books, too. Real books. Marianne looked at Thomas, her eyes full of tears she was trying to hide. Thomas, you didn't have to do all this. Yes, I did. She deserves it. You both deserve it. Sophie hugged everything tightly against her small chest. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you so, so much. I'll take good care of everything. She ran to her room to put the gifts in the safest place she had, on top of the bed she shared with her mum. Thomas looked at Marianne, who was standing by the table, still processing it all. Can I sit for a bit? Talk with you? Of course. Please. They sat at the kitchen table, one on each side. Marianne began to take things out of the bags slowly, still in disbelief at so much quality food. This is too much, Thomas. This is food for months. For many months. It's so you don't have to struggle, at least for a good while. No one should have to choose between paying a bill and buying food. Marianne held a bag of rice in her hands, looking at it as if it were something rare. We were surviving on the basics, sometimes not even the basics. This is more than I ever imagined having in my fridge again. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said softly, her voice heavy, It's been hard, Thomas. Really hard. I lost my job 3 months ago. I worked at a laundry, but it closed down. I've been trying to find another one since, but it's complicated. Nobody wants to hire without good references, and I don't have any. Thomas listened with full attention, without interrupting. I do odd jobs when I can. Cleaning houses, watching neighbors, kids, doing laundry for others, anything that pays. But it's not every day, and the money barely covers the rent. She took a deep breath. And Sophie's father? Thomas asked gently. Marianne gave a sad, tired smile. He left almost 2 years ago. Vanished overnight. No word, no money, doesn't even call to ask about his daughter. We're completely alone in this world. I'm so sorry, Marianne. Truly. I was too. At first, I cried a lot. But then I realized it was for the best. Better to be alone than with someone who doesn't want to stay. Sophie deserves better. She looked toward the bedroom door, where the sounds of Sophie playing happily were coming from, but we're surviving. I do my best to make sure she doesn't miss anything important. She doesn't have expensive toys, she doesn't have brand-name clothes, but she has love. A lot of love. And kindness. I'm teaching her to be good, to be kind, to help others. Thomas looked around the apartment with new eyes. He saw the deep dignity in that place. Even though it was poor, it was clean, organized with care. The few things they had were well kept. There was love there, real care, respect. You're a very strong woman, Marianne, very brave. She shrugged modestly. I do what I have to do. For my daughter, she's my everything. And even so, even with so little, you helped my mother without a second thought. You shared the little food you had, gave her blankets, gave her kindness. Why? Marianne looked at him, as if the answer were obvious. Because she needed it, and because it was the right thing to do. You can't see someone suffering and do nothing, can you? Especially an elderly lady lost in the cold. What kind of person would I be if I shut the door in her face? Thomas was impressed. The purity, the genuine goodness, the sheer dignity despite the terrible difficulties she faced. He took a deep breath and said, Marianne, can I ask you a question? Of course. Have you ever thought about working as a caregiver? For the elderly? Marianne looked up, surprised. A caregiver? Professionally? Yes. You were so kind to my mother. So careful. So attentive. She woke up completely different after spending the night here. Better than I've seen her in months. I really like taking care of people. I always have. But I've never worked at it professionally. I don't have formal experience or a certificate. You don't need formal experience or a piece of paper. You need heart, patience, kindness, and you have all of that in abundance. Marianne was quiet, processing. Thomas continued, his voice firm. I want to offer you a job, Marianne, to take care of my mother. She needs someone like you, someone who sees her as a person, not an obligation, someone who has patience with her confusion, someone who truly enjoys caring. Marianne opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She was shocked. Thomas, I don't know what to say. Say yes. The salary will be good. Fair. You'll work at my house, and you can bring Sophie with you. She can play, draw, keep Rose company. The two of them got along so well. Sophie can come too, Marianne asked, her voice cracking. Of course, I'm not going to separate you. And besides, my mother adores her. She talked about her the whole way home yesterday. Marianne covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders were shaking. She was crying. I'm sorry. It's just that I've been out of work for so long. And with a young child, nobody wants to hire me. And I was starting to get desperate, not knowing what to do. Thomas waited, giving her time. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand and looked at him. Are you sure, really sure? Absolutely. You're perfect for the job. And more importantly, you're a good person. That's what my mother needs, true kindness. Sophie appeared at the bedroom door, holding one of the new books. Mom, why are you crying? Marianne smiled through her tears. I'm crying because something good happened, honey. Something very good. What? Thomas offered me a job, to take care of Rose. Really? Sophie jumped excitedly. Are we going to see Rose every day? You sure are, Thomas said, smiling. You can play with her, show her your new drawings, read your books to her. Sophie ran and hugged Thomas tightly. Thank you, Thomas, thank you so much. I'll take good care of Rose, I promise. Thomas felt something tighten in his chest. He hugged the little girl back. Marianne wiped away more tears and said, "I accept, of course I accept, and I will do the best job I possibly can. I promise to take very good care of your mother. I know you will. When do you want me to start?" "Tomorrow, if you can. The sooner, the better for Rose." "Tomorrow is perfect." Thomas stood up. He held out his hand to Marianne. She shook it firmly. "Welcome, Marianne. You have no idea how much this means." "It means everything to me too," she said, her voice emotional. "You don't know how much I needed this. How much Sophie needed this." "We need each other," Thomas said simply. "My mother needs you, and I hope I can help you too." Sophie tugged on Thomas's hand. "Can I bring my new pencils tomorrow?" "To draw with Rose?" "Of course you can. Bring whatever you want." She smiled wide and ran back to her room. Thomas looked at Marianne one last time. "Tomorrow, 8 in the morning. I'll text you the address. Okay?" "That's great. And Marianne?" "Yes? Thank you. Really, for everything. You saved my mother. You truly saved her." Marianne shook her head. "We did what was right, and now you're doing what's right for us. That's how the world works. Kindness breeds kindness." Thomas left the apartment with his heart lighter than it had felt in years. He went down the stairs slowly, thinking about everything. He got in the car and smiled, because something had changed, not just for Marianne and Sophie, not just for Rose, but for him too. He had done something right, something good, something that truly mattered. And there, on that cold winter day, a new chapter was beginning. For all of them, a chapter of care, of kindness, of family, a true family, built not by blood but by choice, by gentleness, by love. And Thomas knew, deep in his heart, that this had been the best decision he had made in a long time, maybe the best of his entire life. The weeks passed quickly. Marianne and Sophie arrived every day at 8 in the morning. Marianne with a simple bag over her shoulder, Sophie with her backpack full of colored pencils and notebooks. At first, Rose was confused by the changes. She would look at Marianne and Sophie as if trying to remember where she knew them from. But the smile always came, an instinctive smile, coming from somewhere deep in her emotional memory. "Good morning, Rose," Sophie would say every day, running to hug the elderly woman. And Rose always hugged her back even when she couldn't quite remember the girl's name. But little by little, something began to change. Rose started to remember, not everything, not always, but moments, feelings, faces. "Sophie, the girl with the doll," she would say, smiling, and Sophie would jump for joy. "That's right, Rose, it's me." Marianne established a routine. She would wake Rose up gently, help her bathe, get dressed. But she didn't do everything for her. She let Rose participate, choose her clothes, comb her own hair. "Do you prefer the blue dress or the green one today?" Rose would look, think, and decide. "The blue one. I've always liked blue." And Marianne would smile. "Blue it is, then." After breakfast, Sophie would come over with her drawings. "Rose, will you come draw with me?" And the two would sit at the large dining room table. Sophie would spread out the colored pencils. Rose would pick one up, then another, looking at the colors intently. "What color should we use for the sky?" "Blue," Rose would say. "And for the sun?" "Yellow, a nice bright yellow." They would draw together. Sophie drew houses, flowers, trees. Rose sometimes just drew lines, simple shapes. But she was present. She was there. "That's beautiful, Rose. Look how well you drew that flower." Rose would smile, a real, proud smile. "It did turn out nice, didn't it?" Sophie kept all of Rose's drawings in a special folder. She wrote the date on each one. "So in this way you can see how much you've improved." And Rose did improve. Every day a little more. The lines became firmer, the shapes more defined, the colors more vibrant. Marianne noticed everything, and it moved her. After drawing came the songs. Sophie knew several children's songs that her mother had taught her, and she started singing them for Rose. At first, Rose just listened. She would nod her head to the rhythm, clap her hands now and then. But after a few days, she started to sing along, quietly at first, just a few words, but it got stronger. "Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are." Rose's voice was weak, shaky, but it was there. It was coming back. Sophie would hold her hand, and the two would sing together, swaying from side to side. Marianne would stop what she was doing just to watch, her heart tight with emotion. Thomas noticed too. He would come home from work in the late afternoon and see the two of them in the living room, drawing, singing, laughing. His mother was laughing. When was the last time he had seen her truly laugh? He couldn't remember. Rose also started to care about her appearance again. Before, she didn't care. She would wake up with messy hair and stay that way all day. She would wear whatever clothes were put on her. But now it was different. She would ask Marianne to comb her hair a specific way. "Can you put in that pearl clip? The one my mother gave me." "Of course, Rose. I'll go get it." And Marianne would comb her hair carefully, making a nice bun, putting in the antique clip. Rose would look at herself in the mirror and smile. "It looks nice. It looks beautiful. You look beautiful." Rose also began to choose her clothes with more care. She wanted to wear the floral dress, or the pink blouse, or the pearl necklace. "Is today a special day?" "Every day with Sophie is special," Rose would reply, and Marianne would smile. Rose's speech also improved. Before, she spoke very little. Short, confused sentences. She would forget words mid-thought. But now she talked more, full sentences, stories. She told Sophie about when she was young, about the flowers she used to plant in the garden, about the dog she had as a child. His name was Rex. He was big, furry, and barked at everyone, except me. Sophie listened, wide-eyed. "Did you like him a lot?" "I loved him. He slept in my room. My mother didn't like it, but I let him anyway." The two of them would laugh together. Marianne cared for Rose with a deep affection. It wasn't just a job. It was something more. She helped Rose take her medication. She prepared delicious, healthy meals. She took her for walks in the garden when the weather was nice. "Let's go for a walk, Rose. See the flowers?" "Yes, let's." And the two would walk slowly through the immense garden. Rose would stop to touch the flowers, to feel the texture of the petals. "This one is a rose, like my name." "It is, and it's beautiful." "Not as beautiful as me," Rose would joke, and Marianne would laugh. Thomas watched it all from a distance. He started coming home earlier now. He put work aside more often, because he wanted to be there. He wanted to see. He saw his mother smiling, singing, talking. He saw Sophie running through the house, bringing joy to every corner. He saw Marianne taking care of everything with such dedication. And something was changing inside him too. One evening, he was in his office when he heard laughter coming from the living room. He went to see what it was. Rose and Sophie were on the sofa. Marianne was reading an illustrated book to them. She was doing different voices for each character. All three were laughing together. Thomas stood in the doorway, just watching. This was family. This was home. This was what it should have always been. "Thomas." Sophie saw him first. "Come listen to the story with us." He hesitated. "I don't want to interrupt." "You're not interrupting. Come on," Rose said, patting the sofa next to her. Thomas approached slowly. He sat down next to his mother. Sophie climbed into his lap without asking, already comfortable with his presence. "We're reading about a bunny who gets lost in the forest, but in the end he finds his family again." "That's good," Thomas said, his voice sounding strange. Marianne continued reading. He listened with Sophie in his lap, Rose by his side, Marianne in the armchair across from them, and he realized he didn't want to be anywhere else. In the following days, Thomas started coming home even earlier. "How can I read to you tonight?" he asked one afternoon. "Yes," Sophie cheered. "Do you know how to make funny voices?" "I can try." He picked up one of the books, sat on the sofa, Rose on one side, Sophie on the other, and he began to read. He was nervous at first. His voice was a bit stiff, but gradually he relaxed. He made different voices. Sophie laughed. Rose smiled. "You're good at this," Sophie said. "Thank you. Read another one, please." And he read 1, 2, 3 books. Rose rested her head on his shoulder as he read, a simple gesture, but it meant everything. "Did you used to read to me when I was little?" Thomas asked quietly. Rose thought for a moment. "I did, every night. Before you went to sleep?" "I didn't remember that." "But I do," Rose said, squeezing his hand. Thomas felt his eyes sting. Marianne watched from a distance, drying dishes in the kitchen. She smiled, seeing the scene. A family forming. Not in the traditional way, but in the right way. The weeks turned into months. Rose continued to improve. She wasn't cured. The Alzheimer's was still there. There were still bad days, confusing days, but the good days were more frequent now. She remembered more things, spoke with more clarity, smiled more, and most importantly, she was happy, truly happy. Sophie became an essential part of that routine. She and Rose had a special connection. The little girl seemed to understand instinctively when Rose was confused, when she needed space, when she needed company. "Come on, Rose, let's color this picture together." And Rose would go, without hesitation. Marianne was the heart of it all. She cared, she organized, she calmed. She brought balance to the house that was once cold and silent. And Thomas was learning to be present, learning to listen, learning what really mattered. He would look at these three females, his mother, Marianne, and Sophie, and see something he had never seen before. He saw what money couldn't buy: true love, genuine care, real connection. And for the first time in many years, Thomas felt whole. His mother was coming back. Not completely, but enough. And he was grateful. Grateful for that snowy night. Grateful for Marianne and Sophie. Grateful for having had the chance to fix what was broken. And grateful to be able to be there, right now, reading stories to the most important trio in his life. Rose's transformation was visible, but Thomas's transformation was even greater. He just hadn't fully realized it yet, but he was about to, and when he did, everything would change again, for the better, for good. It was late at night. Marianne was in the kitchen, finishing putting away the dinner dishes. Sophie and Rose had gone to bed an hour ago. The house was quiet, just the soft sound of water running in the sink. Thomas appeared in the kitchen doorway. He was still wearing his work clothes, but his tie was loose, the top buttons of his shirt undone. He looked tired, more than tired. He looked like he was carrying an immense weight. "Marianne," she turned, drying her hands on a towel. "Hi, Thomas. I thought you had already gone to bed." "I can't." There was something different in his voice, something broken. "Is everything okay?" He didn't answer right away. He just stood there, staring at the floor. "Can I talk to you? Just for a few minutes." "Of course. Should we sit down?" They went to the living room. They sat on the large sofa. Thomas leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped together. Marianne waited. She didn't rush him. She just waited for him to find the words, and then Thomas began to speak. "I saw her today, with Sophie. They were drawing, and my mother was smiling. That real smile I hadn't seen in so long." He paused, his voice faltering. "And I thought everything was better, that she was coming back." Marianne listened in silence. Then I got closer and said, "Mom, can I draw with you?" And she looked at me and asked, "Who are you?" His voice broke completely. "She didn't know who I was, Marianne. My own mother looked at me and didn't recognize me." He covered his face with his hands. His shoulders began to shake. Marianne moved closer slowly. She placed a gentle hand on his back. "Thomas, she doesn't remember me anymore," he said, his voice muffled by his hands. "She remembers Sophie. She remembers you. But she doesn't remember her own son." The tears began to fall. Tears he had held back for so long. For months. Maybe for years. I tried so hard. I tried so hard to be a good son, to give her everything. The best house, the best doctors, everything. And she still forgot me. He took his hands away from his face. His eyes were red, wet. "What did I do wrong, Marianne? Why doesn't she remember me?" Marianne took his hand firmly, warmly. "You didn't do anything wrong. The disease doesn't choose what to erase. It's not your fault." "But it feels like it is," he said, his voice desperate. "It feels like I wasn't important enough for her to remember, like I didn't truly make a mark on her life." "That's not true." "Then why does she remember Sophie, a girl she's only known for a few months, and not remember me, her son?" Marianne took a deep breath. Because her memory doesn't work the normal way anymore. She doesn't remember the distant past, but she remembers the present. She remembers who is here now, every day, making her smile. Thomas looked at her. Sophie is present. She draws with her, sings with her, plays with her, every day. So her brain holds on to that, because it's new, it's now. And me, I'm here too. You are. But you came home late for years, Thomas. You told me so yourself. You worked too much, traveled too much. Even living in the same house, you lived separate lives. The words hurt, but they were true. So I lost my chance, he said softly. I lost the chance to be remembered by her. Marianne squeezed his hand tighter. No, you didn't lose it. Yes, I did. She's already forgotten me. She forgot your name. She forgot your face. But she didn't forget that you exist. She didn't forget that she loves you. Thomas looked at her, confused. How do you know? Because I see it. Every day. She looks at you with affection. She may not know who you are, but she feels that you're important, that you're safe, that you're someone she can trust. But it's not the same. No, it's not the same. But it's what you have right now. She turned her body to face him. Thomas, your mother is here. She's still alive, still breathing, still smiling, still singing. She still exists. Thomas listened, tears still streaming. And as long as she's here, there's still time. Time for you to be truly present, to make her happy, to create new memories, even if she doesn't remember them tomorrow. But what's the point if she's not going to remember? The point is in the now, Marianne said firmly. In the moment you read a story to her and she smiles, in the moment you hold her hand and she squeezes back, it doesn't matter if she'll remember tomorrow. What matters is that she felt it in that moment. Thomas was silent, processing. You still have your mother, Thomas. It may not be the way you wanted, but she's still here, and that's a gift. It's a gift that many people no longer have. She wiped a tear that fell onto his cheek. So stop focusing on what you've lost, and focus on what you still have. Focus on being present now, because that's what matters. Thomas looked at Marianne, really looked. He saw her strength, her wisdom, her kindness. How are you so strong? I'm not strong. I just learned that life is too short to waste on regret. We do the best we can with the time we have. She smiled gently. And you have time, Thomas. Your mother is here. Enjoy it. Be with her. Even if she doesn't know your name. Be there. Thomas felt something shift inside him, something deep, as if a door that had been closed for years had finally opened. Ah, she's here, he repeated softly. She is. And there's still time for you to be the son she needs now. Not the son you think you should have been, but the son she needs today. Thomas nodded slowly. The tears were still falling, but they were different now, lighter, cleaner. Thank you, Marianne, for everything, for taking care of her, for opening my eyes. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. You changed everything for her, and for me, too. Marianne gave a soft smile. We just did what was right. The rest was you. You chose to bring us here. You chose to be more present. You chose to change. Thomas took a deep breath. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. I'm going to be better. I'm going to be here, and for real. I know you will. They sat there for a few more minutes in comfortable silence. Then Thomas stood up. I'm going to bed now. I want to wake up early tomorrow. I want to have breakfast with her. And with you. We'd love that. He started to leave, but stopped at the door. Marianne. Yes. She's here. There's still time. Exactly. Thomas smiled. A small but real smile, and he went up to bed. But this time, he didn't carry the weight from before. He carried something different. Hope, purpose, and the certainty that it wasn't too late. Marianne sat in the living room for a few more minutes, looking at the stairs Thomas had gone up, and she smiled, because she knew something had changed in him that night, something important, and that from now on, everything would be different, for the better, for good. The next morning, Thomas woke up at 7, not because of the alarm, but because he wanted to. He showered, put on more casual clothes, jeans and a simple shirt, and went down to the kitchen. Marianne was already there making breakfast. She was startled when she saw him. "Thomas, are you okay? Did something happen?" "I'm great. I just wanted to wake up earlier today." She looked at him curiously, but smiled. "Coffee's almost ready. Can I help?" Marianne stopped what she was doing. "You want to help?" "I do." "What can I do?" She thought for a second. "Can you set the table? The plates are in that cabinet." Thomas got the plates, the glasses, the silverware. He set the table carefully. It wasn't something he normally did. There was always someone to do that. But today he wanted to. Sophie appeared in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. "Good morning, Thomas. You're up early." "I am." "Good morning, Sophie." "Is Rose awake yet?" "Not yet, but she'll be up soon." Marianne went to Rose's room. She knocked gently on the door and went in. A few minutes later, the two came down together. Rose was still in her robe, her white hair loose on her shoulders. "Good morning, Rose." Sophie ran to hug her. "Good morning, dear." Rose looked at Thomas sitting at the table. She studied his face for a moment. There wasn't full recognition, but there was something, a soft smile. "Good morning." "Good morning, Mom." They sat down to have breakfast together. All four of them at the same table. Thomas ate slowly, observing. Sophie told stories non-stop. Rose listened intently, laughing at the right moments. Marianne served more coffee, more toast, making sure everyone was okay. It was simple, but it was perfect. When he finished, Thomas looked at the clock. Normally, he would have left half an hour ago, but today he didn't rush. "I have to go to work now, but I'll be back early today, okay?" "Okay," Marianne said. Sophie got up and hugged him. "Come back soon." Thomas hugged her back. Something so simple, but it filled his chest with warmth. At work, he had trouble concentrating. He kept thinking about the breakfast table, about Sophie's laughter, about Rose's smile. He looked at the clock, 2 in the afternoon. Normally, he stayed until 7, 8 at night, sometimes later. But not today. He started to organize his things. He delegated a few meetings, answered the most urgent emails, and at 5 in the afternoon, he shut down his computer. His assistant looked up, surprised. "Mr. Thomas, leaving already?" "I am. If anyone needs me, they can text. But what about the 6 o'clock meeting? Reschedule it for tomorrow." She was dumbfounded. Thomas grabbed his coat and left. When he got home, it was 5:30. He opened the door and heard laughter coming from the living room. He went in. Sophie and Rose were on the floor, surrounded by colored pencils and paper. They were drawing together, Sophie explaining every color she used. "Thomas!" Sophie yelled happily. "You're home early." "I am. Can I draw with you?" "Yes, sit here." He took off his jacket, loosened his tie, and sat on the floor with them. Sophie handed him a piece of paper and some pencils. "Draw a house." Thomas picked up a green pencil. It had been years since he had drawn, maybe decades. He started slowly, a square, a triangle on top for the roof. "That's nice," Sophie praised. "Now draw a door." He drew a door and a window. Rose watched, smiling. "You draw well." "Thanks, Mom." They stayed there for over an hour, drawing, talking, laughing. Marianne appeared in the living room doorway, drying her hands on her apron. "Dinner's ready." "Already?" Thomas looked at the clock. He hadn't noticed the time pass. "Already? Shall we?" They ate dinner together. Thomas at the head of the table, Marianne on one side, Rose and Sophie on the other. The table that was once always empty and silent was now full of life. Sophie talked about the drawing she had made. Rose commented on the colors. Marianne served the food with care, and Thomas just listened, smiled, participated. He was present. After dinner, they went to the living room. "Story time," Sophie announced. "I'll read today," Thomas said. "Yay!" He grabbed one of the books from the shelf that Marianne had organized, a book about a brave princess who saved the kingdom. He sat on the sofa. Sophie climbed into his lap. Rose sat beside him, Marianne in the armchair. Thomas began to read. He made different voices for each character. Sophie laughed, Rose smiled, even Marianne smiled, listening from where she sat. He read one book, then another, and one more. One more. Please, Sophie begged. Okay, just one more. And he read. Because he wanted to. Because he enjoyed it. Because this was where he wanted to be. The days turned into weeks, and the routine continued. Thomas woke up early, had breakfast with everyone, went to work but left at 5, came home and joined in on everything. He drew with Sophie and Rose, ate a dinner with the family, read stories before bed. On the weekends, he didn't travel anymore. He stayed home. On Saturdays, he took everyone to the garden. Sophie ran around. Rose walked slowly admiring the flowers. Marianne brought a blanket, and they had a picnic. On Sundays, they watched movies together, ate popcorn, laughed at the funny scenes. The house changed completely. Before it was cold, silent, empty. Now it was warm, noisy, full of laughter, full of conversation, full of life. Margaret commented to Marianne one day, "This house is so different. It feels like a home again." "That's because it is now," Marianne replied. Thomas changed too, not just his routine, but inside. He smiled more. He was more relaxed. He worried less about work and more about the people around him. He started to notice little things. How Sophie tied her shoelaces in a crooked way. How Rose liked to sit by the window in the late afternoon. How Marianne hummed softly when she cooked, and he started to value those things. One night, after Sophie and Rose had gone to bed, he stayed in the living room with Marianne. "Thank you," he said suddenly. "For what?" "For teaching me how to live again." Marianne shook her head. "I didn't teach you anything. You're the one who chose to change. But you showed me the way," she smiled. "You just needed to remember what matters. Family. Time. Presence. The rest is secondary." Thomas agreed. "I spent so much time focused on making money, on being successful, that I forgot what it was all for. And now I know. It's for taking care of the people we love, for creating moments, for being together." Marianne smiled proudly. "Now you get it." Thomas looked around the room. He saw Sophie's drawings taped to the wall. He saw the blanket Rose used tossed on the sofa. He saw the books piled on the small table. He saw a home, a real home, and he realized he had never been happier. Not because he had more money, not because he had more success, but because he had more love, more connection, more meaning. And that was worth more than anything in the world. The change had happened, not overnight, but little by little, day after day, choice after choice. And now, Thomas was no longer the man who worked late and forgot about his own mother. He was the man who came home early to draw with someone's daughter who had become family. He was the man who read stories every night. He was the man who finally understood what it meant to be present, and that house, once so empty, now overflowed with life, with warmth, with joy, with family. And Thomas knew he would never want to live any other way again. Never again. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon. Thomas was in his office, reviewing some documents, but he wasn't really focused. His mind was in the living room, where Sophie and Rose were drawing together, as they did every day now. He heard light footsteps on the stairs, then a soft knock on the office door. "Come in." The door opened slowly. Rose appeared in the doorway, holding a piece of paper carefully in her hands. Her eyes were shining in a different way, clearer, more present, more alive. "Thomas?" He stood up from his chair immediately, dropping his pen. "Hi, Mum, is everything okay?" "It is. I made something. I want to show you." She approached slowly, each step taken with care. She held out the paper to him, her hands trembling slightly. Thomas took it gently. It was a drawing, done with colored pencils. The lines were simple, childlike in some places, but filled with deep meaning. There were 3 figures drawn in the center of the paper, all holding hands, forming a human chain. The first was small, with bright yellow hair and a blue dress. Sophie, clearly. The second was taller, with yellow hair too, but longer, and a pink dress. Marianne, no doubt. And the third figure was a man, tall and brown hair, a green shirt, and a big smile drawn on his face. Underneath the drawing, in Rose's shaky but surprisingly legible handwriting, it said, "My family, Sophie, Marianne, and my boy." Thomas stared at the drawing, his heart beating harder and harder in his chest. "That's my Thomas," Rose said softly, pointing with a wrinkled finger at the drawn man. "My son, my boy." Thomas looked up slowly, in disbelief, almost afraid to believe it. "Mom, you know who I am?" Rose smiled, a soft but completely genuine smile, her eyes full of real recognition. "I do. You're my Thomas, my son, my boy who grew up and became this handsome man." Her voice came out steady, clear, present. Thomas felt his legs go weak, the paper trembled in his hands. "Mom, I thought you had completely forgotten me." "I don't remember everything. It still gets confusing sometimes. The days mix together, the memories fade in and out, but I know who you are. I always knew deep in my heart. I just couldn't put the pieces together. But my heart always remembered, always." Thomas couldn't hold back. The tears began to fall, thick, hot, uncontrollable. "I was so afraid of losing you, of you disappearing completely. But I didn't disappear, I just got a little lost along the way. But now I've found my way back. You helped me find it." She moved closer and put her wrinkled hand on his face, wiping away a tear with her thumb. "You're here now, every day, reading stories, drawing with us, eating at the same table. You came back to me, my son. You really came back." Thomas let the paper fall gently onto the desk and hugged his mother with all the strength he had. A tight, desperate hug, full of everything he couldn't express with words. "I'm here, Mom. I'm here. And I'm never going to leave you again. Never, ever again." Rose hugged him back, squeezing with all the strength her frail body allowed. "I know, my son, I know." They stayed like that for long minutes, embracing, crying, healing old wounds that could finally scar over. When they finally separated, Thomas held her hands in his. "Thank you, Mum, for not giving up, for keeping fighting to remember. Mothers never give up on their children, never. Even when the mind forgets, the heart doesn't. The heart never forgets." Thomas smiled through the tears that were still falling. "I love you, Mum, so much." "I love you too, my boy. I always have, I always will." Rose picked the drawing back up from the desk and looked at it lovingly, running her fingers over the colored lines. "Sophie helped me make it. She picked the right colors, told me where to draw each thing, but I drew it with my own hand and I wrote underneath too. Because I wanted you to know, I wanted you to be sure. You know what? This is the most valuable gift I've ever received in my entire life. More valuable than all your money? Much, much more. Infinitely more. This is priceless. There's no value that can measure it." Rose smiled, satisfied, her eyes shining with pride. "Then keep it safe. So you always remember this day." "I will. I'm going to frame it and put it right here in the office gate on the wall, so I can see it every day when I work." They went down the stairs together, hand in hand. In the living room, Sophie and Marianne were organizing the colored pencils back into the large box. "Rose showed you the drawing," Sophie shouted excitedly, running over to them. "Did you like it? We worked really hard on it." Thomas knelt in front of her, getting down to the level of the girl's blue eyes. "I loved it, Sophie. I really loved it. Thank you so much for helping her. You are very special." "You're welcome. Rose draws really well now." Much better than when she started. Thomas looked at Marianne, who was standing near the sofa. She was smiling, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Thank you," he said quietly, just for her to hear. "You don't need to thank me. Rose did it all herself. It was her own strength. But you created the right environment for it to happen. You and Sophie brought her back to life, back to me." Thomas was silent for a long moment, looking at these three females, thinking, feeling, deciding something that had already been growing in his heart. Then he said, his voice firm, "Marianne, can I talk to you in private? It's important." "Of course." They went to the kitchen. Thomas leaned against the marble countertop, gathering his thoughts. "I've been thinking about some things these past few weeks, about everything that's happened. What specifically about you two?" about this whole situation. And I've realized something very clearly. You're not employees here anymore. You changed everything in this house. You changed my mother completely. You changed me too. You turned a cold place into a real home, and now you are part of our family. For real. Marianne stood quietly, just listening intently. And I don't want you to go back to the apartment every day. It doesn't make sense. I want you to stay here, to live, not to work. To live here as family. Marianne's eyes widened, surprised. Thomas, this house is huge, Marianne. There are so many empty rooms, and you deserve a much better place than that small, damp apartment. Sophie deserves her own room, with space to play, to study. I don't know what to say. And there's something else important. Sophie needs a better school. A really good school, with resources, qualified teachers, a library, everything. I want to enroll her in the best school in the area. I want her to have every opportunity she deserves. Thomas, this is all too much. It's not too much. You've already done more for us than I could ever repay. You gave life to this house. You brought joy where there was only silence. You brought love where there was only emptiness. And I want you to stay. I want to give back, not because I feel obligated, but because I want to, from the heart, because you're family now. Marianne covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes quickly filling with tears. Are you being serious? Completely serious. I've never been more serious in my life. I want you to live here forever, as part of the family, without paying anything, without worrying about money. This is a home. Your home, too, now. Thomas, I have no words. You don't need to thank me. Please, just accept. Be part of this family. Marianne wiped her tears. Yes, we accept. Of course we accept. How could I refuse? You're giving us a chance I never thought we'd have. Thomas smiled wide, relieved. Really? You really accept? Really? With all my heart. He hugged her tightly. A family hug. One of unity. They went back to the living room. Sophie was showing another drawing to Rose. Sophie, Marianne called, her voice emotional. Come here, sweetie. The girl ran over. Time, what is it, Mom? Thomas knelt to her level. We're going to live here now, you, your mum, me and Rose, all together like a real family. Sophie's eyes went wide. Live here. Forever. Forever. And I get my own room. All to yourself. And you can decorate it however you want. Sophie screamed with joy and jumped into his arms. Really? For real, for real. For real, for real. We're going to be a real family. She ran to Rose. Rose, we're going to live here with you. Rose smiled, opening her arms. How wonderful. I won't be alone anymore. Never again. In the following days, everything changed quickly. Thomas hired a moving company. He went to Marianne's apartment himself to help. There wasn't much. Simple clothes, a few books, Sophie's rag doll, but every item was treated with care. This was our home, Marianne said, looking at the empty apartment. As simple as it was ours. And now you'll have an even better home, but we'll never forget where we came from. Thomas prepared Sophie's room. He painted the walls light pink, bought a canopy bed, a bookshelf full of books, a desk for drawing, toys, dolls, everything. When Sophie saw it, she stood frozen in the doorway. This is all mine. All yours, princess. She walked in slowly, touching everything. Mom, I have a princess room. Marianne was crying. Yes, you do. You deserve it. Sophie hugged Thomas. Thank you. You're the best. Marianne got a room too, a large one with a king-size bed. I've never had a room like this, she confessed. Now you do. It's all yours. The school was taken care of. Thomas enrolled Sophie in the best one in the area. He bought uniforms, school supplies, everything. On the first day, he and Marianne took her. Sophie was nervous. What if no one wants to be my friend? They will, Marianne assured her. You're kind, funny, and smart. When she got out, she was smiling. I made 3 friends, and the teacher said I draw really well. Thomas and Marianne exchanged a proud look. That night, they ate dinner together for the first time as a complete family. Thomas at the head, Rose on one side and Marianne on the other, Sophie between them. This is our family now, Sophie said, a real family. It is, Thomas agreed, and that's what makes it special, because it was by choice, it was love. Rose held Marianne's hand and Thomas's hand. I'm a lucky woman. I have my son. I have Marianne. I have Sophie. I don't need anything else. We don't either, Sophie added. We have love. And it was true. 1 year later, it was Christmas Eve again. But the house was completely different now. Christmas lights twinkled in every window. A huge tree stood in the center of the living room, covered in colorful ornaments. In the kitchen, Marianne was preparing the dinner. The smell of roasted turkey, potatoes, and pies filled the entire house. In the living room, Thomas was on his knees, adjusting the last ornaments on the tree. Sophie was handing the ornaments to him. This one needs to go higher, Thomas. Okay, boss. Rose was sitting on the sofa, wrapped in a shawl, singing Christmas carols. Sophie sang along. The house was warm, not just from the lit fireplace, but from the warmth of the people inside it. It was alive, full of laughter, conversation, music. It was full of love. Sophie stopped suddenly. She looked around. She looked at Thomas fixing the tree. She looked at Rose singing. She looked at the kitchen where her mother was cooking happily. "Mom," she called. Marianne appeared in the doorway, her apron covered in flour and a smile on her face. "Yes, honey." Sophie looked at everyone, her eyes shining. "We're a real family now, aren't we?" Marianne smiled, her eyes filling with tears. "Yes, we are, my love. A real family." Thomas stood up. He looked at everyone with gratitude. "That's exactly right, Sophie. A real family, the best family I could ever have." Rose held out her arms. Sophie ran and hugged her. Thomas and Marianne moved closer, too, and there, in that lit-up room, the four of them held each other in a tight hug. A family that fate had not planned, but that love had built. Thomas looked out the window. The snow was falling again outside. And he remembered everything. The night Rose disappeared, the desperation of searching for her, finding her in that small apartment. Of Marianne and Sophie, who had almost nothing, but shared everything. And he smiled, because it had all been worth it. Every moment, every choice, every change. And there, on that Christmas night, surrounded by the people he loved most, Thomas finally understood the true meaning of family. It wasn't about blood. It wasn't about obligation. It was about choice. It was about love. It was about being present. And it had all started with a simple soup, a worn-out doll, and a gesture of kindness, a small gesture that changed everything. Forever. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like, because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.